Assalamu alaikum, it's me again, Craig, and just another idea for today, just some more insights into the Quran, looking at it from different angles. And today, what I wanted to talk about was just briefly about the idea that nothing really matters except God. That anything that we do is just vanity and really meaningless. Life is really inherently meaningless, and only God, Allah, and doing things for His own sake really matters. What got this idea for this particular video was actually a verse from the Bible. So, being of Christian background, it's quite interesting to go back to the Bible and compare it with the Quran. A lot of obviously similar ideas. So, I want to quote something from the Bible, and I'm going to actually go to read off this paper. It's from a book in the Old Testament, Ecclesiastes, and it's 2:11 from Ecclesiastes. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on the labour that I had laboured to do, and indeed all was vanity and grasping of the wind. There was no profit under the sun. So this book in the Old Testament is reportedly, the legend goes, composed or narrated by King Solomon, Prophet Suleiman, peace be upon him, in Islam. And a lot of this book laments on the idea that he was wealthy, he was the king, he had both wealth and power, but he realized that this all meant nothing, that it was all really meaningless. Everything he had seen, everything under the sun, and he found, and this idea creeps up again and again in this book in the Bible about all this vanity. It's just all boasting, all just about the self and image, but it's not, you can't really grasp it. And then when it all comes to the end, it all comes to nothing. Death comes to the rich and the poor alike, and the next generation even mentions that the next generation comes again and again, and the earth is still there, and we're just chasing after the sun, chasing after the wind, and it's just the same stuff again and again, everything under the sun. And the idea behind underlying all of this is that nothing really matters apart from gaining God's approval or God's pleasure. Only that is substantial, only that is eternal. Everything else is just vanity. And for Muslims, I think we can obviously really relate to this idea. Idea is very found in different aspects and different shades and different verses of the Quran. So I wanted to keep in mind that verse from Ecclesiastes in the Old Testament and listen to what verse 18 of chapter 14 says in the Quran. The example of those who disbelieve in their Lord is that their deeds are like ashes, which the wind blows forcefully on a stormy day. They are unable to keep for what they have done carried a single thing. This is the extreme error. So here is given the idea of those who don't believe in God, those who disbelieve in the Lord, Allah, that whatever they do, at the end of the day, it's nothingness. It's like deeds that are just swept away in like the wind in a stormy day. And at the end of their life, they have nothing left. So there's some carryover here with maybe you can see with the verse that we quoted earlier from the Bible. The idea is that if you are not basing your life on God's approval, doesn't matter if you're rich, if you have power, ultimately it's just like everything else. Every day it's all under the sun, and the sun will be there, you will pass away, next generation will come, do the same, they'll die, and ultimately you will not have anything substantial. And why? Is because they disbelieve in their Lord. Whatever they are doing is not having at its foundation seeking God's approval or even believing that Allah or God exists at all. So the underlying idea between both, you can see these verses, is that only in believing in God and doing stuff for the sake of God is substantial. And interestingly, in this verse from the Quran, Razi, who was one of the great commentators in Islamic history, mentioned that the deeds that is referring to the disbelievers do are even good deeds. So we're not necessarily talking about that they're doing bad deeds. Any deed that anyone does, even if it's good, even if it's charitable, if it's not for the sake of God, if it's not for God's approval, then it's also just nothingness. Maybe God will give them their reward in this life, but ultimately when it comes to the scales and everyone's given their just due after the Day of Judgment. Because the belief in Allah wasn't there and seeking God's approval wasn't there, any deeds that anyone does, any wealth that anyone grasps, any status that anyone attains, that all comes to nothingness. And the only thing would be good deeds for the sake of God. We can say this in all the chapters, all the verses in the small chapter of Surah 103, where it talks about that by the time the afternoon comes, man is in a state of loss, except for those who believe, do good deeds, and who encourage truth and patience. Again, the idea that nothing matters, no status, no wealth, only these things at the end of the day matter. Why? Again, we can look to another verse of 37 of chapter 34, where it says that nothing will bring you closer to God, not your wealth nor your children, apart from believing and doing good deeds. So ultimately it comes down to even good deeds are only weighty if they are seeking God's approval. Come to another verse in the Quran of verse 39 of Surah 53, I think, off the top of my head, is that what we are given at the end of the day, in the Day of Judgment and how we are judged, is that what we are weighted on in judgment is what we strove for in life. So it's about that, what are we striving for? Are we striving for God's approval? Great. If we are striving for anything else, and it could be a multiple of things, other people's approval, status, wealth, worldly approval, you can get all of that all you want, and maybe you'll be the next billionaire, trillionaire. But at the end of the day, that is not something substantial. It's not about dissing wealth or not, providing for your family and not seeking the bounty of Allah, but understanding that these things are, in and of themselves, just vanity. And that they only get meaning if they have Allah or God as their foundation. So I hope that maybe gives you a little bit to think about. Trying to give a sort of correlation between the Bible and the Quran, which can be quite common, and getting an idea that's actually not just common between Islam and Christianity, but it's actually common amongst all religions. It's probably one thing that all religions do point to, and that is to try and shift the focus away from material things and to higher purposes and to spiritual things. So until next time, have a great night. Salams.